Hi, I'm Larry Menti. Welcome to Another Thing. Polls show this presidential campaign features the two most disliked candidates in the history of polling. The polls also show the majority of Americans find themselves voting for the candidate they dislike least and are frustrated by their choices. So how did we end up with these two candidates, and does the process need to be fixed? That's our lead topic today, and we begin our coverage with Kolodziej. Ellen.
Thank you, Larry. So even though the general election hasn't even happened yet, some party bigwigs on both sides of the aisle are talking about major changes to the primaries. Everything from moving the conventions up to shorten the primary season to taking some power away from key states. The 2016 primary debates were ones for the ages.
We need to honor our promises. Let me finish. The only time I've had a chance. Let me finish.
Okay, all right.
It's not a very nicely asked question, the way you say that.
I got about 4 minutes last debate. I'm going to get my question right now.
I appreciate it, Jeb. I'm all for you.
Let me tell you how that.
We're moving on.
Let me tell you how
Senator
that.
Paul, I've got a question for you.
So
on
you
the
don't
same
actually
subject.
want to hear the answer, John?
Senator Paul,
You don't want to hear the answer. You just want to insult.
So much bickering that many voters were turned off before the Republicans even picked a nominee.
The nominating process has gotten more confused, more complicated, more elongated, if you will, and less capacity to control the kind of candidates that are going to be competing, and in the end, even the kind of candidate who's going to win.
Professor Randall Miller teaches at St. Joseph's University. He's also a prominent political analyst. He says the contentious atmosphere helped Donald Trump emerge victorious and spelled big trouble for the GOP.
We have democratized the system, not just in terms of the election, but in terms of the nomination, where the primaries are everything. And as a consequence, what we've gotten are people who come from outside the parties. They want the party label, they might have the party label, but they're not beholden to the party.
If you are talking about the Wall Street bailout, where some of your friends destroyed this economy, excuse me, I'm talking.
Let him run. If you're going to talk, tell the whole story, Senator
Let
Sanders.
me tell my story, you tell yours.
I will.
Things got heated for the Democrats as well, especially after leaked emails forced the head of the DNC to resign. Many believe Debbie Wasserman Schultz helped tilt their primaries in Hillary Clinton's favor and called for a shakeup. All this has led to both parties considering changing how to avoid a future scenario again, pitting two unpopular candidates against each other. Some Republicans want to close the primaries to independents and allow only Republicans to vote. Democrats might abolish or reduce the number of superdelegates and switch to a winner-take-all system instead of proportional votes. Both parties might hold their conventions earlier, plus strip Iowa and New Hampshire of the privilege of going first, because their voters don't always reflect the rest of the country.
After every election, especially the losing party starts talking about why do we lose, what problems that our candidates have, were the problem with the candidate or was the problem with the process?
So even though none of these suggestions are set in stone, party leaders insist that the next time the primaries roll around, they will all look a whole lot different. Reporting for Another Thing, I'm Kolodziej.
Thank you, Ellen. Now to continue our conversation on the craziest presidential election of our time is Fran Moran, political science professor at New Jersey City University. I'm fair in saying this is the craziest presidential election of modern time.
Absolutely, beyond a doubt. It's pretty rare where you have two candidates at this stage with the high negative numbers for both candidates.
There's 300+ million people in this country,
yes,
and these are the two running for president, and they are disliked by the majority of Americans. How did we get here?
Wonderful question, wonderful. How far back in time do we need to go? The idea of the primary elections, you're looking at a reform enacted early part of the 20th century. We're going to get it more democratic. We're going to get more people participating. They don't really pick up until the 1970s. This is how we're going to decide. We're going to have our electorate pick our nominees. And both parties tried to, have been working with that model. And I guess how to put that, the basic contenders, that is who the potential nominees to run, it's gotten so expensive to compete in all these elections around, it narrows the field unnecessarily. The people that can do the fundraising early can amass the war chest. It scares off a lot of the opposition.
I think what you're talking about is there's competing philosophies. There's a philosophy that we're the Democratic Party, we're the Republican Party, we get to pick our nominee. And then there's the philosophy, well, wait a second, the people should pick the nominee.
Right.
And there's been mistakes both times.
Once Hillary announced, because she was so much well-connected inside to party leadership, it scared off a lot of potential challengers. You had Martin O'Malley, who hadn't been involved in national politics prior to that, and Bernie, who wasn't even a Democrat when he decided to announce. Knowing the advantages she had going into what was going to be a protracted process was sufficient to scare off other competition. So that's how the Democrats ended up with Hillary. On the Republican side, because it was such a wide open field, you had so many contenders, and Trump brilliantly figured out a way to run his campaign without relying on a lot of extra money. That is, he put his own money in, but using social media, using Twitter, getting all that free media.
And outlandish behavior.
It gave him a huge advantage in the primaries. He outflanked all of them on the right, and so they end up with a candidate perhaps that is not best suited for what the whole party wants, but he had a significant enough chunk of their voters early on locked up.
So that's how we got here. How do we fix it? Will both parties now look at it and go, we've got to tweak this a little bit?
I think you're likely to see a bit more tweaking on the Republican side, because I think there's genuinely more discouragement over who ended up leading their party this time. There was a perception, I think, more on the Republican side that he wasn't an authentic Republican. That's not what the Democrats are facing. You know, I think they recognize Hillary is one of them. Their issues are different. So I don't expect a lot of changes on the Democratic side. The Republicans may want to make some changes similar to what the Democrats have done, and that is increasing the superdelegates. In the Democratic side, it's not a trivial number. It's a significant number, and that was one of the obstacles, Bernie complained about through the process. I'm winning in delegates, but when you add the superdelegates, I'm losing. Well, yeah, that's why they're there. They wanted a mainstream candidate. Republicans don't have, they have some, but not nearly as many.
And the superdelegates, in theory, can be controlled because they're part of the Democratic Party. Many of them are office holders. Many of them are Democratic leadership.
Right. So when you're worried, like, what's this nominee going to do to the down ballot races in my state or in my, you want to consider that. The leaders can consider that when they're who they want to back as their nominee. The Republicans didn't have that option here, right? They didn't have enough superdelegates to try to sway the convention into a Cruz or a Rubio or somebody they perceived to be a more likely or a more palatable nominee.
And yet, what the Republicans did was more of a democratic system. They may not have liked the results, but it was more democratic. It was more in line with our democracy. What the Democrats did is, seemingly, if you listen to Bernie Sanders, they had assurances. They had some assurance that it wasn't going to be someone like Donald Trump.
Exactly. I think if you look, the Democratic Party was leading the move to add the primaries. They started it first. The Republicans came on late. They're about 2 electoral cycles behind. They're where the Democrats were in '80, when it's like, we got a nominee that's getting destroyed at the national level. How do we fix that? And that's when they begin to tweak with the number of superdelegates that they're adding in. So the Republicans aren't there yet. They will likely, coming out of this election, do another soul-searching move, assuming the polls hold up.
Assuming Trump loses.
Yeah, assuming the polls hold up as they are. And if Trump goes down, they will try to figure out another way to prevent this from happening.
And so if Hillary were to lose, you don't think they'd go back and say, wait a second, we have to get a choice of the people, somebody that people like more?
No, I don't think so. I think the party leadership is content with the way that process worked. I think they would have been more concerned.
Why have primaries at all? Why not just let the parties pick their nominees and say these are the 2 we're putting in the fight?
Well, the people have, it depends, the people have some say, it's still there, but it is a party, so there's a sense that as the party, the leaders should have some decisions or some opportunity to decide who best represents their interests. I mean, it's also part of the democracy. I want to make the case that it's not democratic to have these leaders in. It is, they're all part of the same system. They want the party to succeed.
One last quick question.
Sure.
Will there ever be a legitimate third-party candidate? You thought this was the year where that could happen.
The odds are so stacked against them. I mean, the way the U.S. electoral system is. I mean, you got to figure the last third party to succeed is the Republican Party. I mean, that's 1860. You know, I mean, we've had our two parties for a long time. The Libertarians are the one that's usually looked at as being just on the cusp. They've been around since '72. They're all. It's just really difficult in our system. It's winner take all. It's not.
And the two parties protect themselves. There's some self-preservation.
They write the election laws. How do you get on the ballot? You got to go through the states. States are all controlled by the two parties. They don't make it easier for third parties.
Well, we had this discussion earlier. I'm sure this is going to be after the election. This is going to be topic A.
There'll be much soul searching on whoever loses. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate talking to you. Fran Moran, professor at New Jersey State University in the Political Science Department. When we come back, online dating has become huge, but do the people who go to Tinder and Bumble look for Mr. Right or Mr. Right Now?